This is a reading from the diary of Saint Gemma Galgani. First Communion Resolutions. Before leaving the convent, I made certain resolutions regarding the conduct of my life. 1. I will receive confession and communion each time as though it were my last. 2. I will visit Jesus in the Blessed Sacrament often, especially when I am afflicted. 3. I will prepare myself for every feast of our Blessed Mother by some mortification, and every evening I will ask my Heavenly Mother's blessing. 4. I want to remain always in the presence of God. 5. Every time the clock strikes, I will repeat 3 times, My Jesus, mercy. I would have liked to add other resolutions to these, but my teacher would not permit it, and she had good reason, for within a year I returned to my family. I had forgotten these resolutions as well as the good advice I had received, and I became worse than before. I continued to go to school, to the nuns, and they were fairly satisfied with me. I went to communion 2 or 3 times a week, and Jesus made himself felt ever stronger. Several times he made me feel very great consolation, but as soon as I left him, I began to be proud, more disobedient than before, a bad example to my companions, and a scandal to all. At school, not a day passed on which I was not punished. I did not know my lessons, and I was almost expelled. At home, I would not let anyone have peace. Every day I wanted to go for a walk, always wearing new clothes which my poor father provided me for a long time. I ceased to say my usual prayers morning and evening, but while I was committing all these sins, I never forgot to recite every day 3 Hail Marys with my hands under my knees, a practice my mother had taught me that Jesus might protect me every day from sins against holy purity. Charity toward the poor, new conversion. During this time, which had lasted almost an entire year, the only thing I had left was charity to the poor. Every time I left the house, I asked my father for money. If he sometimes refused it, I would take bread, flour, or some such thing, and God himself would see to it that I met some poor people. For every time I left the house, there would be 3 or 4. To those who came to the door, I would give clothes or whatever else I had. But then my confessor forbade me to do these things, and I stopped doing them. In this way, Jesus worked in me a new conversion, for my father no longer gave me money. I could take nothing from the house, and every time I went out, I met none but poor people, and they all ran after me. I could not give them anything. This pained me so that I wept continually. For this reason, I quit going out except when I really had to. The result was that I grew tired of clothing. I grew tired of clothes and everything else. I wanted to make another general confession, but I was not permitted to do so. I did confess everything, however, and Jesus gave me such a deep sorrow for my sins that I felt it always. I asked pardon of my teachers because I had displeased them most of all. But this change did not please my father and my brothers. One brother especially chided me because I wanted to go to Mass every morning, but from then on, Jesus helped me more than ever. Living with her aunts. At this time, as my grandfather and uncle were dead, 2 of my aunts, my father's sisters, came to live with us. They were good, religious, and affectionate, but their affection was never the tender love of a mother. They took us to church every day, and they were diligent in instructing us in the religion. Among us brothers and sisters, some were better and some worse. The oldest boy, the 4th of our family to die, and the youngest girl, Julia, were the best, and so were more loved by my aunts. But the others who took my bad example were far more lively, and so less appreciated. Nonetheless, none of us lacked what was needed. I was always the worst of all, and who knows what a strict account I must give to the Lord for the bad example that I gave to my brothers and companions. My aunts never failed to correct me in all my failings, but I responded arrogantly, giving them many short answers. Now, as I have said, Jesus used my prohibition to give alms as means to convert me. I began to think of how much my sins offended Jesus. I began also to study and work harder, and my teachers continued to encourage me. The one defect for which I was often reproved and punished was my pride. My teacher frequently called me pride personified. Yes, this was my greatest sin, but only Jesus knows whether I realized it or not. Many a time I fell on my knees before my teacher and all the class, and even the Mother Superior, to beg pardon for this sin. And also many a time in the evening I wept when I was alone. I was not aware of this sin, and every day I fell into time and again without adverting to it. A good teacher. The teacher who at the time of my retreat had explained the Passion to me, reproved me one day and explained the matter to me. Perhaps she had noticed a change in me, but she did so little by little. She often said to me, "Gemma, you belong to Jesus, and you should be all his. Be good. Jesus is pleased with you, and you need much help." Meditation on the Passion ought to be something very close to your heart. Oh, if you could always be with me. That good teacher had detected my desire. At other times she said to me, "Gemma, what graces Jesus has given you." I, who never understood all this, remained as one dumb, but sometimes I felt the need of a little talk, and I don't hesitate to say it, of a caress from my dear teacher, so I ran looking for her. Sometimes she would appear very serious, and when I saw her like that, I would cry. Then she would take me into her arms, even though I was 11 years old, and caress me. As a result, I was so attached to her that I called her my mother. Retreat of 1891. Every 2 years, the nuns used to have a retreat that was open also to the external students. It hardly seemed true that I could commune so intimately with Jesus again, but this time I was all alone without any help, for the nuns were making their own retreat at the same time as the children. I understood well that Jesus was giving me this opportunity to know myself better and to purify myself and please him more. The retreat was held in 1891, and during this time, Gemma was to be completely changed as to give herself entirely to Jesus. I recall the words that good priest repeated so often. Let us remember that we are nothing and that God is all. God is our creator, and all that we have he has given us. I remember that after a few days of the retreat, the preacher had us make a meditation on sin. It was then that I came to realize, dear Father, that I was worthy only to be despised by all. I saw myself to be so ungrateful to God, guilty as I was, of so many sins. Then we made a meditation on hell, of which I knew myself to be deserving. And during this meditation, I made this resolution. I will make acts of contrition during the day, especially when I have committed some fault. During the last days of the retreat, we considered the example of humility, meekness, obedience, and patience of Jesus. And from this meditation, I formed 2 more resolutions. To make a visit to Jesus in the Blessed Sacrament every day, and to speak more with the heart than with the tongue. And 2, to try to avoid speaking of indifferent things, and to speak rather of heavenly things. At the end of the retreat, I obtained permission from my confessor to receive communion 3 times a week, and likewise to go to confession 3 times a week. And I continued to do this for 3 or 4 years, until 1895. Meditation on the Passion of Jesus. I continued to go to school every day, but the desire to receive Jesus and to know more about his passion increased, so much so that I succeeded in getting my teacher to explain it to me for an entire hour after every 10 hours of work or study. I desired nothing else. Every day I worked or studied 10 hours and spent an hour listening to the explanation of some point on the Passion. Many times, as I thought of my sins and my ingratitude to Jesus, we began to weep together. It was during these 4 years that this good teacher taught me also to perform some little penance for Jesus. The first was the wearing of a little rope around my body, and there were many others. But no matter how hard I tried, I never obtained the permission of my confessor for these things. Therefore she taught me rather to mortify my eyes and my tongue. She succeeded in making me better, but with much difficulty. This good teacher died after having led me along for 6 years. Then I came under the direction of another who was fully as good as the first, but she also had to reprove me often for the ugly sin of pride. Under her direction, I began to have a great desire to pray more. Every evening, as soon as school was out, I would go home and shut myself up in my room and recite the entire rosary on my knees. And often I would rise during the night for about a quarter of an hour to recommend my poor soul to Jesus. Her father's Benjamin, her brother Gino. My aunts and my brothers did not pay much such attention to me. They let me do whatever I wanted because they knew how bad I was. But my father always took great delight in me. He often said, and this often made me cry, "I have only 2 children, Gino and Gemma." He said such things in the presence of all the others, and to tell the truth, we, Gino and I, were about the most mischievous in the house. I loved Gino more than the rest. We were always together. During vacation time, We would amuse ourselves by making little altars, celebrating feasts, and so forth, and in this we were always one. As he grew up, he had the desire of becoming a priest, so he was sent to seminary and put on clerical dress. But a few years later, he died. During the time when he was sick in bed, he wanted me always near him. The doctor gave up all hope for him since I was so sorry that he was going to die. I started using all his things so that I would die too. As a matter of fact, I almost did die. I became very seriously ill about a month later. I cannot describe the care lavished on me, especially by my father. Many times I saw him weeping and begging Jesus to let him die in my place. He used every means possible to cure me, and after 3 months, I was well again. She leaves school, ornaments of a spouse of the crucified. The doctor forbade me to study anymore, and I quit school. Many times the superior and the nuns sent for me to come and be with them, but my father would not let me go. Every day he took me outside. He gave me everything I wanted, and I began to pamper myself once more. But I kept going to communion 3 or 4 times a week, and even though I was so bad, Jesus came and dwelt with me and said many things to me. I recall very well one time I was given a gold watch and chain. Ambitious as I was, I could hardly wait to put it on and go out. An indication, dear Father, that my imagination was working on me. I did, in fact, go out with it on. And when I returned and started to take it off, I saw an angel, whom I recognized immediately as my guardian angel, who said to me very seriously, "Remember that the precious jewelry that adorns a spouse of the crucified King can only be thorns and the cross." I did not even tell my confessor about this. In fact, I now tell it for the first time. These words made me fear, as did the angel himself. But a little later, while reflecting on them, without understanding them all, I made this resolution. I resolved, for the love of Jesus and to please him, never to wear the watch again, and not even to speak of things that savor of vanity. At the time, I also had a ring on my finger. I took it off immediately, and from that day to this, I have not worn such things. So I resolved, because Jesus had given me clear lights to the effect that I should be a religious, to change my life. I had a good occasion to do this, for we were about to begin the year 1896. I wrote in a little book, "During this new year, I resolve to begin a new life. I do not know what will happen to me during this year, but I abandon myself entirely to you, my God, and my aspirations and all my affections will be for you. I feel so weak, dear Jesus, but with your help, I hope and resolve to live a different life, that is, a life closer to you."